Hello, my name is Brother Ross Wilets. I'm a member of the Congregation of Christian Brothers. Sometimes we're known as the Edmund Rice Christian Brothers because of our founder, Edmund Rice, who began our congregation with his first school in 1801 in Ireland. I have been ministering for the congregation most of my life as a high school teacher in the Christian Brothers high schools throughout the United States. I also have coached over the years many different high school sports. The subjects in which I spent my time teaching were science, mathematics, and religion. After a while, after many, many years in the classroom, I was given the opportunity to study and become certified as an addictions counselor. So I have spent 12 years of my life as a certified addictions counselor, and I have had two major employments. One with a company called DACO in Tampa, Florida, where I had an office in a probation office. So I was working with the men and women that were on probation or men and women that were just released from jail or prison. I helped them with a program to remain sober. And the second major employment I had as an addictions counselor was at a homeless shelter on the south side of Chicago for women who became homeless because of their addictions. And I spent about 5 or 6 years ministering and counseling them at the homeless shelter. So the reason we're together today is I'm hoping that this program that you see will help you to make good decisions to keep your life a lot happier and healthier. Our first program here, or the program we see, is going to be on problems and the difficulties of smoking nicotine and using nicotine products, e-cigarettes and vaping and marijuana. So I call these the three lung busters. I'm not sure where you are in terms of using or experimenting with smoking cigarettes or vaping or using marijuana, but even if you've experimented with it a bit, you should learn how to stop now while you're young. And if you haven't experimented in any of these fields, I think it's a lot easier not to start. The reason we're here today is to realize that you and your body are a temple of God, and that the Spirit of God dwells in you. And the temple of God, which you are, is holy. So your body is sacred. So we need to take care of it. Regarding cigarettes, cigarettes kill more on a yearly basis than all these other combined reasons for death. Alcohol abuse, cocaine addiction, heroin addiction, homicide, suicide, fires, car crashes, and AIDS. Present statistics say that there are almost 500,000 people in the United States, 480,000, that die each year due to tobacco-related diseases. That would be 16 million smoking-related diseases that we have in today's world. Alcohol-related diseases that cause death are 100,000 per year, but most recently the statistic is about 88,000. Drug-induced deaths, I have a number there, 14,000. And that was before, a number of years before, the opioid crisis took over. So since people are being addicted to opioid chemicals and painkillers, that is up to about 70,000 per year in the United States. Despite all the news and knowledge we have about how addictive cigarette smoking is, there's still in the United States over 40 million adults and 4.5 million teens and preteens still smoke in the United States, despite all the warnings and the health issues. How smoking kills. Shortens life 10 to 12 years. In my experience, this is very, very true. My father was a heavy smoker all his life. When I was about 12 years old, he said, "Son, don't ever start smoking." And I obeyed him. I did not start smoking. And he died at 73. It certainly shortened his life by 10 to 12 years. He had a terrific, ugly, deep cough in his late years due to all his smoking. All my uncles, his brothers, my brothers on my mother's side, they all were smokers. And they all died early. My dad's brothers, one of them died in his late 50s, and the others died in their 60s or early 70s due to their many, many years of smoking. Smoking cigarettes causes over 85% of the lung cancer patients. 30% of all cancers are caused by smoking. So here are the diseases caused by smoking cigarettes. Heart disease. That could be angina, strokes, a weakened heart, gastric ulcers, stomach pain, bronchitis, emphysema, stroke, and COPD. When you watch television, sometimes Grandpa is taking his grandson fishing, and he has COPD. And COPD is kind of a combination of bronchitis and emphysema together. COPD is for C, chronic obstructive, O, P, pulmonary, D, disease. So here it is. Okay, big guy, you've got COPD. Take these pills, and you got to take these medications. Because number one, big boy, it's chronic. So it's going to be forever, and it's not going to get any easier. O, obstructive. There's an obstruction in your lungs, and they can't breathe easily. It's hard to get air in and out. Pulmonary for P, that's lung, that has to do with lungs, and D is disease. So this is a disease that most people who smoke for many years get, and it's a terrible thing to have when you get older. Smokeless tobacco. Chewing tobacco or snuff, the worst form of using tobacco. It's going to cause nicotine addiction. It's going to cause heart disease. And it's going to cause cancers of your mouth, gums, and cheek. You're going to probably lose some teeth. Their teeth will get brown, and it's a terrible thing. I have some experiences with people and smokeless tobacco in my life. Number one, the most common smokeless tobacco is Copenhagen or Grizzly, and these are the two that are popular. And the way you put it is you dip your fingers into this moist tobacco, and you put it between your gum and your teeth, and you chew on it, and it becomes mixed with your saliva that you have to spit out every once in a while. So that's chewing tobacco. Now, in my experience with smokeless tobacco, it seems as if it's a macho thing. But it's also very, very popular in sports. Baseball, we can talk about the baseball program. In the early days of baseball, most of the minor league teams had their stadiums built and supported by the tobacco companies in the Virginias and Georgia and so on. And so in the clubhouses of all the minor league stadiums, with all the minor league, was all the tobacco they could smoke or chew. So chewing tobacco became very popular with the baseball industry. Most of these young players coming up through the minor leagues started to chew tobacco and continued to chew throughout their pro career. At the present time, Major League Baseball has banned all smokeless tobacco, and these players cannot use it anymore. So now you might see them blowing bubble gums or chewing on seeds or something. Hockey players will use it, lacrosse players, the tough, wild sports, and it is kind of a macho thing. So I thought that, I don't think girls chew tobacco. I said, well, maybe some of the tougher ones. But I knew a baseball coach who coached many, many long years at one of our high schools. He also coached in college, and he coached the girls' softball team in college. And yes, there were a couple of the girls on his softball team that chewed tobacco. So some of the stories I have about smokeless tobacco are going to follow here. Number one is I was coaching a high school baseball team, and it was right before the formal practice started, and a couple of my sophomore boys were out in center field flagging fly balls, and all of a sudden, one of them bent over and started to regurgitate. So I got the word later that they were out there and they were chewing tobacco for the first time, and they swallowed some of it, and it's a poison, and they got sick to their stomachs and had to regurgitate it out. Another incident was that when I was a youngster going to high school in the south side of Chicago, we were taught by the Christian Brothers. I went to a nice Christian Brothers high school in Chicago called Leo High School, and we were taught by the Irish brothers. Most of them at that time had just come from Ireland. And so they had a habit of using snuff. So they would be teaching us, and believe it or not, I had this one brother, and he'd have this little snuff box with him, and he would take a little snuff and sniff it up his nostrils while he was teaching. And then, of course, he wasn't too good at it, so all that brown stuff got on his nose, and then it filtered down and it got on his black cassock, his black habit, and it was just totally gross. And the last story I have about smokeless tobacco was I had a dentist, and believe it or not, I was being worked on by this dentist. So I'm in the dentist chair, and he's chewing tobacco. All right, so it went like this. And then he'd take his cup, his little plastic cup, and he'd spit in it, that brown, ugly tobacco juice. And then we go. That ugly brown tobacco juice that he was chewing on. And I'm saying to myself, this is really gross. Well, he was kind of macho, Mr. Southside Chicago, and a hockey player. Even he's a dentist. But here's a dentist, a professional medical person who should be very hygienic, very clean. And in the middle of his vocation as a dentist, he's doing this, and which is totally against what you would expect from a medical profession who is only hoping to have good teeth, good mouth, good gums, and, so on. And so there have been terrible experiences of people that have gotten cancer from using smokeless tobacco, where they had to have part of their jaw or part of their face and so on amputated because of the cancer of the gums and the cheek. Not a good idea to use smokeless tobacco. So when you look at the people that smoke, most of them started early. 75% of teen smokers, which start when you're young, continue. And they're adjusting their young brain that is not fully developed into an addictive brain that needs to have cigarettes to keep it down. A lot of adults want to quit but can't. They try. My dad tried for many times to quit smoking and failed, but near the very end of his life, he did stop. And it's just not cool anymore. So if you want to start smoking tobacco or chewing tobacco or smoking, it's going to cost you a lot of money. The cigarettes and so on, it's very, very expensive. And it's going to be a drag on your finances. Ha, ha, ha. That's a joke. Now I have my 3 anti-smoking advertisements. These are anti-smoking. Now this reminds me of my father in his late days with his heavy cough. If you smoke Kent 3, what you're going to experience is your lungs are being busted and you have this ugly, terrible cough. And here's what smoking Durell cigarettes promise. They promise that you can't breathe. So here's a lady that's needing a breathing tube to breathe successfully. And then the last anti-smoking advertisement I have reminds me of when I was in high school, when Marlboro cigarettes I believe that was the company, started to advertise a pack of cigarettes that um, would not crush, a crush-proof box for your cigarette so that it wouldn't crush. And if you smoke cigarettes, here's what's going to happen to you regarding a crush-proof box. There is what's going to happen if you smoke cigarettes. So to finalize the smoking, the cigarettes, and the nicotine addictions in any different ways, we have to remind ourselves again that we're made by God. He lives within us, His Spirit. We are temples of the Holy Spirit. And God made all human airways for fresh air. Think of that. Our human airways really, really do well if we can breathe in fresh air. And that's the way we were made. Even the people in the fires now, recent fires, they breathe in bad smoke and so on. So that's lung buster number 1. Now, lung buster number 2, e-cigarettes and vaping. At the present time, here's where we are. You have to be 21 years old to buy vaping products. And the federal government at the present time has banned a lot of the candy, the dessert, and flavored juices that are used with the e-cigarettes, and because of the young people that start to vape. Some of the statistics is approximately 1 in 4 teens have experienced vaping. And by June of 2020, vaping products have caused 60 deaths and over 2,700 hospital stays because of what it does to the lungs. When the vaping became popular, there was a subculture of men and women that used liquid or waxed forms of marijuana, and they would smoke this in their e-cigarettes, and then you don't get the marijuana smell or the danger of smoke or fire, so you can be vaping a marijuana cigarette, all right, as the liquid or wax melts and comes into a smoke without anybody knowing. And they know that all the lung diseases that are caused by, most of the lung diseases caused by vaping are with vaping marijuana, up to about 75%. So due to vaping, when they go to hospital, all right, they get pneumonia-like symptoms when they're in the hospital. They have difficulty breathing. The chemicals that are in the e-cigarettes or the vaping products are, they get chemical burns and poisoned. And oxygen, good oxygen, is prevented from circulating well in the bloodstream. So again, it has a lot of problems with preventing good, healthy oxygen from flowing through your lungs. And the Juul products, which are the most popular brand of e-cigarettes, they also, the ones only containing nicotine, just nicotine, are dangerous for lung disease. So as you start, if you start young, then nicotine is an addictive substance, and your brain is still forming, but you can be rewiring your brain to be addictive, right? If you start using too young or and the doctors that study the lung busting regarding the use of vaping and the chemicals that are poisonous chemicals they find in the smoke and in the cigarettes themselves, they have no business being in our lungs. So again, we're going to remind you that God made all human airways for fresh air. So that takes care of the cigarettes, the tobacco, the nicotine, the e-cigarettes, and the vaping. So our last lung buster is marijuana. Now look at the title. It's the almost widely used ill or illegal drug in the United States of America. The reason that I wrote it that way is because, first of all, in recent years, A lot of the illegal part of the drug has become legal in some states. But maybe 10 years ago, the most widely used illegal drug was marijuana. But recently, the most widely used illegal drug would be the opioids, the painkillers that are made a crisis. And a lot of the marijuana stuff is becoming legal, unfortunately. Yes, are there positive aspects of marijuana or THC? Yes. There are 6 or 7 ways marijuana can help in illnesses if they're monitored very carefully by the doctors. Number one is they have found out that it's very, very good for helping people that are suffering from post-traumatic stress syndrome, like maybe soldiers in the military that have suicidal tendencies. And they have found out that the use of marijuana has helped these patients not commit suicide, how they lift them from that desire to kill themselves. Secondly, they do help in people who are in chemotherapy, and it helps them not get sick to their stomachs. Thirdly, they help glaucoma patients with their eyesight. Fourthly, they can be used in people that have an advanced case of AIDS. They can be used to help improve their appetite. Marijuana can also relieve terrible pain and suffering if an AIDS-related disease, the person is near death or anyone is near death. And they also help in Tourette's syndrome that has to do with tics, physical tics, to prevent that. So yes, it could be a miracle drug, and it has been successfully used medically under the care of a doctor. Of course, one of the guys that I worked with in high school that was using marijuana, I asked him where he got it. He said, well, my father had medical marijuana. So now the family was working with me as the counselor and to try and prevent him from using marijuana. Some of the recent statistics is 20 to 25 million people have tried marijuana over the age of 12. 42% of high school seniors have admitted marijuana use. The addiction rate is about 9% of people that use marijuana. But if you use it as a teenager, kind of regularly, then 1 out of 6 will become addicted. And then if you use it daily, there's up to probably 1 out of 4 will become addicted. Okay, withdrawal effects. One of my experiences was working with the young men that were on probation because of marijuana possession or use. This was in Tampa, Florida, and the young men that were finally arrested and put on probation had probably been arrested a few times or told a few times to stop it. And then the police got to the point, well, that's enough. We're putting you on probation. So what happens is I'm working with these young guys as a counselor once a week in my program to help them to understand drugs. So it was the first time a lot of them had to become free of marijuana. So they've been using it for years, and now they have to stop using it because if you get caught, and I had to give them blood work, and they had to go for blood samples on any given time, and they had to test negative for marijuana in their systems. So I had to deal with these guys once a week, and they told me what it was like not smoking marijuana after using it for a few years, and they were having terrible withdrawal effects. One guy told me, brother, I was restless and irritable and anxious, and I used to weight train 2 or 3 times a day just to try and calm down. Secondly, they couldn't sleep. Thirdly, they lost their appetite. because marijuana gives you the munchies. So without the marijuana, you're not feeling like eating, right? So they were going through a hard time, and these withdrawal effects, physically and of course mental also, is an example of how addictive marijuana is. If you have all these withdrawal effects, it shows you it's addictive. And one of the main problems with smoking marijuana, especially for high school kids or even a little younger, is you lose your motivation to do anything. It's most common that marijuana users will drop out of school, their grades will drop. I had an opportunity to have a sophomore in one of my high school classes where his parents had to send him away the second semester for recovering from his marijuana abuse. And I got an opportunity to interview him later in the summer as part of getting my degree and so on. And it kind of took over his life. He would come home after school and start building all these different things, to bongs to smoke marijuana with. And he would go out and sell fake stuff to get money for more marijuana. Right? So you lose your motivation. So what happens is a lot of them run away from home. A lot of them don't stop using. Right? And then they stop wanting to improve themselves. Well, I would think that cigarettes, smoking cigarettes or anything, drinking alcohol or using marijuana, they're all gateway drugs. You all start with them and you may just continue and make it worse and worse and worse. So we want you to delay even experimenting with them. Because the earlier you start, the greater your risk of becoming addicted because of the brain function. I was working at the homeless shelter in Chicago, south side of Chicago, and one of the young women, one of the young mothers there, started smoking marijuana, probably with her boyfriend. And she had two little children, two nice children, which she brought with her to the homeless shelter. So what happened with her, and I counseled her and so on, is she started to smoke marijuana, and she liked it so much, she just kept smoking it. And I got to the point where instead of going to work, she'd stay home and smoke marijuana. The anti-motivation problem. So to make a long story short, eventually she lost her job. She was fired. She couldn't pay her rent, and she was out on homeless on the street. Only marijuana abuse. So we brought her into the homeless shelter and tried to help her put her life together. And she mentioned that when she was on the marijuana at home, she became a sloppy mother. She wouldn't get her children nicely dressed or ready to go to school. She'd bring them to school late. She may not make their lunch or whatever. And she just became not motivated to do anything. All she wanted to do was chill out and smoke marijuana. And that's a very common problem with marijuana, is your motivation to become a responsible and good person. You lose your motivation to fulfill. So let's make some healthy choices. Let's live life rather than look at it. Let's get active physically with sports and workouts. Let's do some healthy stuff like music, learn to play music, sing, dance, read, get some hobbies that are good. And you have to help others in need too. That's going to help your spirit. You need to do that for your soul. So your body is sacred, a temple of the Holy Spirit, created by God in the miracle of birth. Care for your body, keep it healthy, get good physical exercise, get involved with good hobbies, sports, and help those in need. It's your decision. Happiness, good health, sacredness of your body. God made all human airways for fresh air. Thank you very much for listening. I hope this has helped you along the way.